John Harrington stared at his reflection in the polished metal wall of the new Aurora Interplanetary Research Station. The formal Terran diplomatic suit felt tight around his neck, the unfamiliar weight of ceremonial metals pulling at his chest. How had he, a simple environmental systems engineer, ended up here, about to marry an alien princess? 6 months ago, he'd been troubleshooting oxygen recyclers. Now he was cementing an alliance between Earth and the Elorian star system through marriage. The diplomatic corps had approached him after Princess Lyra Vess had visited the station and, apparently, expressed interest in him specifically. John still wasn't entirely sure why she had chosen him, but the Earth Council had made it abundantly clear how important this union was. 10 minutes. Harrington, called Director Keller from the corridor. The Elorian royal delegation is docking now. John adjusted his collar one last time. Coming, sir. The ceremony preparation area buzzed with activity. Earth diplomats in their finest attire, station personnel polishing every surface to mirror-like perfection, and holographic displays broadcasting the event throughout human and Elorian space. The new Aurora Station, positioned at the midpoint between Earth's solar system and Eloria, had become the symbolic bridge between civilizations. Director Keller approached, his usually stern face softened by an almost paternal smile. Nervous, son? Terrified, John admitted. I've exchanged maybe 50 words with Princess Lyra during her tour of the environmental systems. Now I'm marrying her? This union transcends individuals. Harrington, it's about species cooperation, resource sharing, technological exchange. Keller straightened one of John's medals. Besides, the princess seemed quite taken with you. Something about your explanation of terraforming principles. Apparently, before John could respond, the station's announcement system chimed. Elorian Royal Vessel Celestial Harmony has completed docking procedures. Royal delegation proceeding to Ceremonial Hall Alpha. John's heart hammered against his ribs. This was happening. Actually happening. The ceremonial hall had been transformed from its usual utilitarian appearance into something approaching regal splendor. Earth-native flowers mingled with bioluminescent Elorian flora, creating cascades of color along the walls. The ceiling projected a real-time view of the space between their worlds. Stars and nebulae connecting their home systems in cosmic tapestry. When the Elorian delegation entered, John forgot to breathe. Princess Lyra Vess led the procession, her skin a delicate shade of azure that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and deep violet, met his across the room. Unlike their previous meeting where she'd worn practical attire for the station tour, today she was draped in flowing fabrics that moved like liquid silver, adorned with crystals that caught the light with every step. Behind her walked 2 other women, so similar in appearance that John momentarily thought he was seeing double. They shared Lyra's azure skin and violet eyes, though one's features were slightly sharper, her posture more rigid, while the other appeared more delicate, her gaze thoughtful and assessing. Her Royal Highness, Princess Lyra Vess of the Sovereign System of Eloria, announced the Elorian herald, his voice resonating throughout the hall. Accompanied by Her Royal Highness, Princess Sarah Vess, and Her Royal Highness, Princess Nira Vess. Sisters, John remembered now from the briefing materials. Triplets, actually, a rarity even among Elorians. He hadn't expected them to attend the ceremony. The actual wedding passed in a blur for John. He repeated vows in both English and the musical Elorian language, placed a ring crafted from earth gold and Elorian crystal on Lyra's slender blue finger, and received a similar band in return. Their hands joined, 5 fingers interlaced with 6, as both Earth and Elorian officials declared them united. Throughout the ceremony, John couldn't help noticing how Sarah and Nira watched with expressions he couldn't quite decipher. Not hostility, precisely, but something complex that made him increasingly uneasy. The reception afterward was a carefully choreographed display of intercultural harmony, foods from both worlds, music that attempted to bridge their different concepts of melody and rhythm, diplomatic speeches extolling the historic significance of this union. "My husband," Lyra said softly, as they shared a moment alone. The first words they'd exchanged privately since the ceremony. Her English was perfect, with just a hint of musical lilt. "You seem troubled." "Just overwhelmed," John admitted. "This has all happened so quickly." She touched his face gently, her six-fingered hand cool against his skin. "Time moves differently when worlds align. We have much to learn about each other." "We do," he agreed, then hesitated. "Your sisters, they seem concerned," Lyra suggested. "It is natural. Our bond affects them as well." Before John could ask what she meant, Director Keller approached with the Elorian High Chancellor, and the moment for private conversation passed. Hours later, when the celebrations had finally wound down, John found himself being escorted through unfamiliar corridors of the station. Apparently, special quarters had been prepared for the royal couple. The Elorian attendants led him to an ornate door that certainly hadn't been part of the station's original utilitarian design. "The royal bedchamber awaits. Consort Harrington," said the chief attendant with a formal bow. "Princess Lyra will join you shortly." The room beyond was spacious by station standards, transformed to resemble what John assumed was Elorian royal architecture. The walls curved organically, embedded with softly glowing crystals that provided gentle illumination. The centerpiece was an enormous bed, easily 3 times the size of a standard Earth King, covered in shimmering fabrics. John had just finished awkwardly changing into the sleeping attire that had been provided, something like silk pajamas, but with an odd iridescent quality. When the door slid open, he turned, expecting Lyra, but froze at the sight before him. All 3 princesses stood in the doorway. All 3 wore similar nightclothes, though each in a different shade. Lyra in silver, Sarah in deep blue, Nira in violet. They entered together, the door sliding shut behind them. John stammered, looking between them in confusion. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Lyra approached him first, taking his hands. "My husband, there is something about Elorian royal customs that the Earth diplomats may have, overlooked in their briefings." Sarah, the one with the sharper features and more regal bearing, stepped forward. "Or deliberately withheld, sister. Let us not pretend the humans didn't understand." "Understand what?" John asked, his mouth suddenly dry. Nira, the more thoughtful-looking sister, spoke softly. "The 3 bond. When one royal sister marries, all sisters must bond." John looked between them, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. "Bond? You mean all of you are now your wives?" Sarah stated flatly. "Yes. The royal bloodline requires the 3 bond. One cannot marry without the others." John took an instinctive step backward. "That wasn't in any of the briefing materials. I would have remembered that." "I suspect," Lyra said gently, "that the Earth Council feared you might refuse if you knew the full extent of our traditions." "And the Elorian High Council," added Nira, "likely assumed you had been informed and consented." Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "Perhaps they hoped once the public ceremony was complete, you would simply accept our ways, rather than create a diplomatic incident." John ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. "So I'm married to all 3 of you? And we're supposed to share the royal bedchamber?" "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "Among other aspects of married life." Sarah folded her arms. "If you find our customs so repulsive, human, perhaps this alliance was premature." "Sarah," Lyra chided gently, "he has a right to be surprised." "I'm not repulsed," John clarified quickly, diplomatic training kicking in despite his shock. "Just unprepared. On Earth, marriage is typically between two people, as it is for common Aelorians, Nira explained. The three bond is specific to royal triplets. It ensures unified rule and prevents division of power. It is also, Lyra added, stepping closer to John again, about harmony. We three are connected in ways your scientists might not understand. What affects one, affects all. John looked at the enormous bed with new understanding. And we're all expected to share everything, Sarah confirmed, her expression challenging, including the royal bedchamber. Tonight and all nights, added Nira. I see. John took a deep breath. Diplomatic training battling with personal shock. I think I need time to process this. Lyra nodded understandingly. Of course. We will not rush what should develop naturally. Sarah seemed less sympathetic. The alliance papers have been signed. The three bond is now legal fact, regardless of your Earth sensibilities. What my sister means, Nira interjected, with a pointed look at Sarah, is that while physical intimacy may develop at its own pace, the political and legal bonds are already formed. John nodded slowly. I understand, and I'm committed to making this work for both our worlds. I just wasn't expecting 3 wives tonight. Then perhaps we should simply rest, Lyra suggested. It has been a day of many revelations. That first night established a pattern that would continue in the weeks that followed. The 4 of them shared the massive royal bed, but only for sleep. John on one side, the 3 sisters together on the other. A respectful distance maintained between them. During daylight hours, John tried to get to know each of his wives individually, though their royal duties and his continued work at the station limited their time together. Lyra was the easiest to connect with. She had chosen him, after all, and seemed genuinely interested in Earth culture and science. They would walk through the station's arboretum, discussing environmental engineering, cultural differences, and gradually, more personal matters. Why did you choose me? John finally asked her one day, as they watched Earth butterflies, part of a biodiversity exchange, flutter among Aelorian crystal flowers. Lyra's violet eyes studied him thoughtfully. During the diplomatic tour, when you explained your work on planetary restoration, your passion for healing damaged ecosystems, I saw something rare. What was that? A human who thinks beyond his own lifetime. Her 6-fingered hand brushed against his. Aelorians live 3 times longer than humans. We must think in centuries, not decades. Few humans show such foresight, such care for what comes after them. John considered this. I never thought of my work that way. The Earth was damaged for so long. We're finally healing it. I want to help other worlds avoid our mistakes. Precisely, Lyra smiled. You are a bridge builder, John Harrington, between present and future, between damaged and healed, between worlds. Her words touched him deeply, but also reminded him of the complexity of his situation. And your sisters, do they see me the same way? Lyra's expression grew more contemplative. Sarah values strength and tradition. She questions whether a human can truly understand our ways. Nira seeks knowledge and truth. She wonders about your adaptability. And you? I see possibility, Lyra replied simply. The space between what is and what could be. Sarah proved more challenging to connect with. The eldest of the triplets by minutes, she carried herself with imperial dignity that initially kept John at a distance. Their interactions were formal, sometimes tense, as she seemed determined to test his commitment to understanding Aelorian culture. Your people have asked for access to our crystal technology, Sarah stated, during one of their meetings in her private study, where ancient Aelorian texts shared space with holographic displays. Yet, you still don't understand what the crystals truly are. They're semi-sentient mineral formations that respond to emotional and psychic energies, John replied, recalling his briefings. They form the backbone of your computing and energy systems. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The gesture, oddly human despite her alien features. A technical description that misses their essence. The crystals are memory keepers, dream catchers. They do not merely respond to our emotions. They preserve them. John leaned forward, genuinely interested. Like a recording. Like a living archive. Sarah lifted a small, crystal pendant that hung around her neck. This contains emotions and memories from 20 generations of my maternal line. When I touch it with purpose, I can experience the joy my ancestor felt when she first bonded with her consort, 12 centuries ago. John's eyes widened. That's incredible. Nothing in our briefings suggested that level of complexity. Because your scientists study the crystals as objects, not as partners. Sarah's expression softened slightly. If this alliance is to work, John Harrington, your people must learn to stop dissecting everything they encounter. We're trying to understand. Understanding does not always require dismantling. For the first time, Sarah reached out, placing her blue hand over his. Some things must be experienced whole to be comprehended. That moment marked a turning point with Sarah. While still formal and occasionally stern, she began sharing more about Elorian history and customs, seeming to appreciate John's genuine interest and respect. Nira, the youngest triplet, presented yet another distinct personality. Where Lyra was warm and Sarah imperious, Nira was analytical and quietly observant. She spent much of her time in the station's research facilities, collaborating with Earth scientists on projects combining their different technological approaches. John found her one evening in a rarely used observation dome, watching the distant stars with specialized equipment of her own design. "May I join you?" he asked from the doorway. Nira glanced up, then nodded. "Your presence will not disrupt my measurements." Not exactly welcoming, but not a rejection either. John sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "What are you studying?" "The resonance patterns between our binary stars and your singular sun." Nira adjusted something on her device. "There are harmonic frequencies that might explain why our species evolved with such similarities, despite developing in different systems." John watched as complex patterns formed in the holographic display between them. "It's beautiful." Nira looked at him with surprise. "You see beauty in astrophysical data, don't you?" A small smile curved her lips. "Yes, but I didn't expect a human to perceive it. Most of your scientists focus solely on utility." "Not all of us," John said. "Some of us still look up at the stars and feel wonder." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes before Nira spoke again. "You did not know about the 3 bond before the wedding night." It wasn't a question, but John answered anyway. "No, it wasn't mentioned in any of the materials I received. Yet you have not formally protested or sought annulment. Would that even be possible?" Nira's violet eyes studied him carefully. "No. The bond is irreversible under both our laws now, but you could have created diplomatic difficulties, demanded separate living arrangements, or shown resentment." John considered his response carefully. "I'm committed to making this alliance work, and I'm trying to understand your culture on its own terms, not just through an Earth lens. Even when it means sharing your life with 3 wives instead of 1? "Even then," John confirmed, "though I'll admit, it's an adjustment." Nira nodded slowly. "For us as well. The 3 bond traditionally joins us with an Elorian consort who understands its significance from birth. Sharing with a human who lives 1/3 our lifespan and comes from a completely different cultural framework, it presents unique challenges." "I hadn't considered that," John admitted. "This is probably just as strange for you as it is for me." "Stranger? Perhaps." Nira turned back to her instruments. "I have studied your Earth marriage customs, the exclusivity, the emphasis on romantic love above all other considerations. These concepts are alien to royal Elorians. What is marriage about for you, then, if not love? Continuity, harmony, strategic alliance. Nira adjusted a dial. Love may develop, of course, but it is not the foundation. That sounds very practical. Is practicality not valuable? There was genuine curiosity in her question. It is, John agreed. But on Earth, we have this idea that marriage should be about passion, about finding your perfect match. Perfect, Nira repeated the word thoughtfully. An impossible standard. Surely, no being is perfect, and no relationship without compromise. You're probably right about that, John admitted with a small laugh. Nira's instruments chimed softly. Look, she said, pointing to the display where complex patterns were shifting. The resonance is aligning. The holographic representation showed waves from different star systems, gradually synchronizing, creating a harmonious pattern where before there had been discord. It's not perfect alignment, Nira observed. But perhaps perfect alignment is not required for harmony. John looked from the display to his wife's thoughtful face, struck by the metaphor she had perhaps unintentionally created. No, he agreed softly. Perhaps it isn't. As the weeks passed, these individual relationships developed alongside the increasingly complex political situation. Word had spread throughout Earth space about the unusual nature of John's marriage, and reactions were far from universally supportive. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a priority communication from Earth Council headquarters in Geneva. Director Keller called John to his office to view it privately. They're not happy. Harrington, Keller warned before activating the message. Brace yourself. The stern face of Counselor Vivian Chen appeared on the screen. Engineer Harrington, disturbing reports have reached the Council regarding the nature of your union with the Elorian royal family. While we authorized a diplomatic marriage to Princess Lyra Vess, we did not sanction a polygamous arrangement involving all three princesses. John felt his face flush with anger. They knew. They had to know. Keller raised a hand for silence as the message continued. Such arrangements violate Earth Central Code 47.3 regarding diplomatic personnel and represent potential exploitation of a Terran citizen. Furthermore, conservative elements within the Council are questioning whether this three-bond constitutes a form of alien cultural imposition incompatible with human dignity. The Councilor's expression hardened. You are hereby ordered to seek immediate clarification on the legal status of this arrangement and to explore options for limiting the bond to Princess Lyra alone, as originally intended. The Council cannot endorse what some members are characterizing as alien harem practices being forced upon Earth representatives. The message ended, leaving John seething. They're calling it a harem. Do they have any idea how insulting that is to the royal family? Politics. Harrington. Keller sighed heavily. Conservative factions are using your situation to stir up anti-Elorian sentiment. The upcoming council elections have candidates looking for wedge issues. So my marriage is now an interstellar political football? I'm afraid so. Keller looked genuinely sympathetic. And it gets worse. Your family on Earth has been receiving media attention. Your mother told reporters she was horrified to learn her son was involved in some kind of alien polygamy cult. John winced. She doesn't understand. Few do. The media coverage has been sensationalistic, to say the least. Man marries alien triplets isn't exactly the dignified alliance narrative we were hoping for. What do you suggest I do? Keller considered for a moment. Officially, I should tell you to comply with the Council's directive. Unofficially. He lowered his voice. This alliance is too important to jeopardize over cultural differences. If you believe this three-bond is essential to Elorian royal culture and breaking it would damage relations, then you need to make that case forcefully. And my family, the media? We can arrange secure communication so you can explain your position directly to your family. As for the media, Keller grimaced. That's beyond my control. But perhaps the royal family has suggestions for handling public perception. When John brought the situation to his wives that evening, their reactions were characteristically distinct. Sarah's violet eyes flashed with anger. So the Earth Council pretends ignorance of our most sacred royal tradition. This is deliberate cultural disrespect. Or genuine misunderstanding, Lyra suggested more diplomatically. Their briefings may have omitted the three bonds' significance. Impossible, Sarah countered. Our delegation provided comprehensive cultural documents, which may not have been thoroughly reviewed, Neera observed, her analytical mind already processing the problem. Human bureaucracy is notably inefficient. John sighed. Whatever happened, we need to address this now. The council is suggesting I try to, I don't know, divorce two of you and maintain the alliance with just one. All three sisters stiffened simultaneously, a reminder of their deep connection. Impossible, Sarah declared flatly. The three bond cannot be severed without grave consequences. What kind of consequences? John asked. The sisters exchanged glances before Lyra explained. The bond between royal triplets isn't merely cultural, John. It's biological, even metaphysical. Attempting to sever it would cause profound psychological damage. There are historical precedents, Neera added quietly. During the Third Dynasty, when external forces attempted to divide a royal triad, the separated sister fell into irreversible decline. Within a cycle, all three had perished. John felt a chill. You mean they died? All of them? The connection between royal triplets is life-sustaining, Sarah stated. Your council speaks from ignorance when they suggest breaking the bond. Then we need to make them understand, John decided. This isn't about cultural practices or political preferences. It's about your well-being. The council may not care about Elorian well-being when Earth politics are involved, Neera pointed out pragmatically. Then we'll make them care, John replied, determination hardening his resolve. This alliance benefits Earth as much as Eloria. We need to remind them of that. The situation deteriorated further in the following days. John's colleagues at the station began treating him differently, some avoiding him entirely, others making thinly veiled jokes about his alien harem. One engineer even asked if blue-skinned women were as cold in bed as they looked, earning himself an immediate transfer off-station after John reported the comment. Media coverage expanded beyond Earth to include Elorian public reaction, which was similarly mixed. Traditional Elorians supported the three bond as sacred tradition, while progressives questioned whether forcing human outsiders to comply with ancient practices was ethical. Through it all, John found himself growing closer to his three wives as they navigated the crisis together. The initial awkwardness in their shared bedchamber gradually gave way to a comfortable routine, while physical intimacy developed slowly and carefully. Emotional connections deepened through their shared challenges. One night, as they prepared for sleep, Lyra approached John with unusual solemnity. Tomorrow, the High Chancellor will arrive from Eloria with members of the Royal Council. They wish to evaluate the status of our bond. Evaluate how? John asked, suddenly wary. They will use the royal crystals to assess our emotional harmonics, Neera explained. To determine if true bonding has begun. Sarah, who had been brushing her long, silver-blue hair, turned to face him. They seek evidence that this is a genuine three bond, not merely a political arrangement. The crystals cannot be deceived. And if they determine it's not genuine? John asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Then, they may support the Earth Council's position that the bond should be dissolved, Lyra admitted. They would rather break the alliance than maintain a false bond. John sat heavily on the edge of their bed. No pressure, then. There is something else you should know, Neera said hesitantly. The royal crystals do not merely detect emotions. They amplify and reveal them. You will not be able to hide your true feelings about any of us. Or about the bond itself, Sarah added pointedly. John looked between his three wives, realizing the significance of what they were telling him. So if I have doubts, concerns, reservations, everyone will know. Yes, Lyra confirmed softly. Complete emotional transparency is required. John took a deep breath. Then I should probably figure out exactly how I feel before tomorrow. That night, while his wives slept, John remained awake, examining his true feelings about the unexpected situation he found himself in. He thought about Lyra's gentle wisdom, Sarah's passionate strength, Neera's thoughtful intelligence. He considered how, despite the extraordinary circumstances, he had begun to care for each of them in different but equally significant ways. By morning, he had reached a decision. The Royal Council convened in what had once been the station's main conference room, now transformed with Alorian ceremonial decorations. 7 elder Alorians sat in a semicircle, their azure skin deepened to indigo with age, elaborate silver markings denoting their high status. At the center sat the High Chancellor, distinguished by a crystal headdress that caught the light with every slight movement. John and his 3 wives stood before them, dressed in formal Alorian attire that John still found slightly uncomfortable despite adjustments for human physiology. The Council recognizes the presence of the Royal Triad and their Earth consort, the High Chancellor announced formally. His voice was deeper than any John had heard from an Alorian before, resonating with authority. We gather to assess the integrity of the 3 bond in response to concerns raised by the Earth delegation. Director Keller stood to one side with several Earth diplomats, their expressions carefully neutral, despite the alien ceremony unfolding before them. The sacred crystals will reveal truth, the Chancellor continued, gesturing to an attendant who approached carrying a velvet cushion. Upon it rested 3 crystals, larger and more complex than any John had seen before, pulsing with inner light. Each princess will hold her ancestral crystal. The consort will place his hands upon all 3 simultaneously. The resonance patterns will reveal the true nature of your bond. The sisters each took a crystal, holding them reverently. John hesitated only briefly before stepping forward and placing his hands atop theirs, his fingers connecting with both warm, alien skin and cool crystalline surfaces. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Light flared from the crystals. Not just visible brightness, but something that seemed to bypass his eyes entirely and flood directly into his consciousness. John gasped as emotions that were not his own washed through him in waves. Concern and hope from Lyra, fierce protectiveness from Sarah, cautious intellectual curiosity from Neera. And they, he realized with shock, must be experiencing his emotions just as directly. The crystals projected swirling patterns of light into the air above them, complex interweaving strands that the council members studied intently, occasionally murmuring to one another in their native language. Fascinating, the High Chancellor finally said. The human's emotional patterns show genuine attachment forming to all 3 princesses, though the connections are at different stages of development. John felt heat rise in his face, aware that his private feelings were being analyzed publicly. Princess Lyra's bond with the consort is strongest, as expected, given her initial selection, continued the Chancellor. Princess Sarah's connection shows recent, significant strengthening. Princess Neera's bond is more intellectual than emotional, but solidifying. One of the elder council members leaned forward. But is it a true 3 bond? Can a human even form such a connection? The patterns are unconventional, the Chancellor admitted, studying the light display. Human emotional architecture differs from our own, yet there is undeniable harmonic resonance forming. Another council member spoke. Chancellor, I detect concerning undertones of divided loyalty. The human feels obligation to his Earth authorities that could compromise the bond. All eyes turned to John, who realized this was the moment for which he had prepared all night. With respect, he said clearly. My feelings of obligation to Earth and to my wives are not in conflict. I believe the alliance strengthens both our worlds. Pretty words, the skeptical council member replied. But the crystals reveal deeper uncertainty. John nodded, accepting the observation. Yes, I am uncertain about many things. I didn't choose this path knowingly. I was not fully informed of what the three bond meant before my marriage. Those are facts I cannot change. The light pattern shifted above them as he continued. But uncertainty doesn't equal rejection. I stand here today, fully aware now of what the bond entails, and I choose it freely. John looked at each of his wives in turn. I choose Lyra's compassion, Sarah's strength, Neera's wisdom. I choose to honor the connection between them that I'm only beginning to understand. And I choose to believe that bridges between our different cultures can be built, even when the foundations don't perfectly align. The crystal light pulsed brighter, the patterns reorganizing into more coherent formations. Remarkable, whispered the High Chancellor. The human's declaration has stabilized the resonance patterns. Lyra's eyes shimmered with emotion. Sarah's posture had relaxed slightly, a small smile playing at her lips. Neera nodded almost imperceptibly, approval evident in her gaze. The Council recognizes the validity of this developing bond, the Chancellor announced, after conferring briefly with the others. While unconventional in formation, the three bond shows promising integration. We will support its continuation against Earth's objections. John felt relief wash through him, echoed and amplified through the crystal connection with his wives. Director Keller stepped forward, clearly recognizing the significance of the moment. As Earth's senior representative present, I witness this determination. I will convey to the Council that attempting to sever this bond would constitute cultural interference inconsistent with our alliance principles. The formal ceremony concluded soon after. The crystal connection gently severed as the stones were returned to their ceremonial containers. But something had changed permanently for John and his wives. The emotional transparency they had experienced could not be unfelt or forgotten. That night in their shared chamber, the usual careful distance between John and the sisters was finally bridged, not with physical intimacy, but with a new emotional openness. I felt your choice, Lyra said softly as they sat together. Your genuine commitment despite the difficulties. As did I, Sarah acknowledged. Her customary imperial manner softened. You chose us, knowing the political cost. You chose truth over convenience, Neera added thoughtfully. A rare quality in any species. John smiled, still processing the intense experience of the crystal connection. I felt your doubts too. Your concerns about my human lifespan, about whether I could truly understand your bond. Concerns, yes, Lyra admitted, but not rejection. Never rejection, Sarah confirmed with surprising gentleness. Neera reached out hesitantly, taking John's hand. The bond has 3 stages, according to our traditions. Recognition, which we experience today. Integration, which develops over time. And finally, completion. What does completion involve? John asked. The 3 sisters exchanged glances before Lyra answered. That is for later. Tonight, we celebrate recognition. In the days that followed, both Earth and Elorian media reported on the Council's validation of the 3 bond, though interpretations varied wildly depending on the source. Conservative Earth outlets decried alien cultural imposition, while Elorian traditionalists celebrated the human consort's enlightened acceptance of superior practices. More balanced sources on both sides began exploring the deeper cultural significance of the situation, examining how interspecies relationships might require new frameworks of understanding rather than imposing one culture's norms on another. The Earth Council, faced with the Elorian Royal Council's firm stance and growing public interest in cultural exchange, reluctantly backed away from their demands. Instead, they proposed a new interspecies marriage accord that would establish flexible guidelines for future unions between different species, respecting diverse cultural practices while ensuring informed consent. For John and his three wives. However, political developments took a back seat to their evolving personal relationships. The crystal ceremony had accelerated their emotional connections in ways none of them had anticipated. The careful distance that had characterized their early days together gradually dissolved as trust deepened. One unexpected development was Sarah's transformation from the most resistant to one of John's strongest advocates. Her initial imperial aloofness gave way to fierce protectiveness, especially when dealing with Earth officials who questioned the legitimacy of their bond. Your Counselor Ivanov suggested again today that you might be rescued from our alien entanglement, Sarah informed John, with barely contained indignation after one particularly tense diplomatic meeting. As if you were some helpless child, rather than a consenting adult. John couldn't help smiling at her outrage on his behalf. And what did you tell him? That any attempt to interfere with a recognized royal bond would constitute an act of aggression against the Aelorian crown, Sarah replied with satisfaction. And that you had demonstrated more cultural intelligence in adapting to our ways than the entire Earth diplomatic corps combined. You didn't say that last part. I most certainly did. Sarah's violet eyes flashed, with additional embellishments regarding their limited cognitive capacity that Lyra has suggested I not repeat in your presence. John laughed, genuinely touched by her defense. Thank you, though I'm not sure antagonizing Earth diplomats helps our cause. Perhaps not, Sarah conceded, her posture relaxing slightly as she sat beside him. But they should understand that you are no longer solely under their authority. You are royal consort to the three. Your dignity is our dignity. Her hand found his, 6 fingers interlacing with 5, in what had become a familiar gesture among them. Besides, she added more softly, no one speaks ill of my bondmate without consequence. The possessive declaration, coming from the once distant Sarah, marked how far they had come. Neera's relationship with John evolved differently. Their connection built primarily through intellectual exchange and shared discovery. She began inviting him to collaborate on her research projects, particularly those involving comparative studies of Earth and Aelorian technologies. Your approach to environmental remediation is surprisingly sophisticated, she noted one day, as they reviewed data from an experimental terraforming project. Despite your shorter development timeline as a spacefaring species, necessity drove innovation, John explained. We nearly destroyed our planet before we understood its fragility. We had to develop restoration technologies quickly, or lose our only home. Neera nodded thoughtfully. Eloria never experienced such ecological collapse. Our connection to the crystal consciousness prevented the worst exploitation. Crystal consciousness? The living awareness within the crystal networks that span our world. Neera studied him curiously. You still don't fully understand what the crystals are, do you? John shook his head. Apparently not. They are not merely technology or tools, Neera explained. The crystal formations on Eloria constitute a planetary consciousness, ancient, patient, and wise. Our ancestors learned to communicate with this consciousness millennia ago. It guides our development, prevents destructive actions, preserves knowledge across generations. John stared at her, implications flooding his mind. You're saying your planet is sentient through the crystal network? In a manner your science might not recognize as sentience. Yes. Neera's expression grew more animated than he had ever seen it as she warmed to her subject. Not individual consciousness as you understand it, but a distributed awareness that experiences time and existence very differently than biological entities. That's incredible, John breathed. And the royal crystals we used in the ceremony? Specially cultivated extensions of the planetary consciousness, entrusted to royal families as conduits for its wisdom. Nira hesitated. When we connected through them, you weren't just experiencing our emotions. John, you were touching the outer edges of a consciousness billions of years old. John sat back, overwhelmed by the revelation. Why hasn't any of this been shared with Earth scientists? Would they understand? Nira asked simply. Or would they attempt to quantify, categorize, and ultimately exploit what they cannot comprehend? The question hung between them, uncomfortable but honest. Not all would exploit, John finally said. Some would approach with respect, with wonder. Like you, Nira observed, a small smile forming. Perhaps that is why you were chosen. Chosen? By whom? Nira simply looked at him meaningfully. Who do you think guided Lyra to select you from all possible candidates? Who whispered your name in royal dreams? The implications left John speechless. Lyra, meanwhile, continued to be John's emotional anchor amid the political and cultural complexities they navigated. Her gentle wisdom provided perspective when Earth media coverage turned particularly harsh, or when cultural misunderstandings created friction. My mother called again, John told her one evening, his voice tight with frustration. She still refers to our marriage as my alien abduction situation. Lyra took his hands in hers, her touch cool and soothing. Parents fear what they do not understand. On both our worlds. She won't even try to understand. She's convinced I've been brainwashed or coerced. Time may change her perspective, Lyra suggested. Remember, humans have adapted to countless cultural shifts throughout your history. What seems unthinkable to one generation becomes normal to the next. This isn't just a cultural shift, John pointed out. It's an interspecies relationship with 3 alien princesses. That's a bit beyond changes in social norms. Lyra laughed softly, the musical sound lightening his mood despite himself. True. Perhaps we are asking much of your mother's adaptability. I just wish, John trailed off. That she could see what you see? Lyra finished for him. Experience what you experience. John nodded. Perhaps someday she can, Lyra said thoughtfully. The royal crystals can bridge understanding between different minds. If she were ever willing to visit. The possibility hung between them, unlikely but hopeful. As months passed, the political furor gradually subsided. The alien triplet marriage story, while never entirely disappearing from media coverage, evolved from sensationalist headlines to more thoughtful cultural analysis. Scholars from both worlds began studying the 3 bond as a case study in interspecies cultural adaptation. For John and his wives, life developed its own rhythm. Days filled with their respective duties. John continuing his environmental engineering work, Lyra handling diplomatic relations, Sarah managing Elorian security concerns, Nira advancing scientific collaborations. Evenings spent together in their shared quarters, learning each other's customs, preferences, stories. The second stage of the bond, integration, progressed naturally. The initial awkwardness of their shared bed gave way to comfortable familiarity and gradually to genuine intimacy that respected each person's boundaries and readiness. Then came the day when Director Keller called John to his office with unexpected news. The Earth Council is recalling you to Geneva, he announced without preamble. All 4 of you. They're convening a special session on the Interspecies Marriage Accord, and they want you to testify. John tensed immediately. Is this another attempt to invalidate our marriage? No, Keller assured him. Quite the opposite. They're using your case as the foundation for establishing new protocols. Your bond is being recognized as a precedent for future interspecies unions. That's surprising, John admitted, given their initial reaction. Politics evolves, Keller shrugged. Public opinion has shifted. The scientific and cultural exchange benefits of the Elorian alliance have proven substantial. And frankly, the human interest story of your unique marriage has made you something of a celebrity. Celebrity? John repeated incredulously. Like it or not, You're the face of human-alien relations now. Keller handed him a data pad. Your transport leaves in 3 days. First stop, Earth. Your wife's first visit to your homeworld. The implications hit John suddenly. They'll be the first Elorian royalty to visit Earth directly. Yes. The diplomatic significance is enormous. Keller's expression turned serious. It's also a security concern. Not everyone supports closer ties with aliens. There have been threats. From whom? Extremist groups. Earth purity movements. Religious fundamentalists who consider interspecies relationships unnatural. Keller sighed heavily. We'll have maximum security. But you should be prepared for protests. Media harassment. The works. John nodded grimly. I'll warn my wives. The journey to Earth aboard the diplomatic vessel, Concordia, gave John time to prepare his wives for what they might encounter. He showed them videos of Earth cities, explained human customs and taboos, and tried to prepare them for the intense media scrutiny they would face. They will ask invasive questions about our private life, he warned. Human media has few boundaries when it comes to sensationalist stories. Sarah looked untroubled. Let them try. Royal Elorians are trained from birth to manage public appearances. Earth media is different, John insisted. They'll try to provoke emotional reactions, to catch you off guard. Perhaps, Neera mused. We should prepare standard responses to the most predictable questions. Like, who's his favorite wife? Lyra suggested with a smile. Or, how does the bedroom situation work? Sarah added dryly. John felt his face flush. Exactly those kinds of questions. The answer to both, Lyra said gently, taking his hand, is that royal bonds transcend human categories. We are not 3 separate relationships, but one unified bond with distinctive aspects. That sounds diplomatic, John acknowledged. Diplomatic is what we need, Neera pointed out. We represent not just ourselves, but the future of human Elorian relations. The Concordia entered Earth orbit on a clear spring morning. As the ship descended toward the Geneva International Spaceport, John stood with his 3 wives at the viewing port, watching his homeworld grow larger beneath them. It's so blue, Sarah observed, genuine wonder in her voice despite her usual composure. And green, added Neera. The atmospheric composition creates different light refraction than Eloria. Lyra simply squeezed John's hand. Your home is beautiful. Our ancestral home, he corrected gently. New Aurora is home now. The spaceport was ringed with security when they landed. Through the ship's windows, John could see both the official welcoming committee and, beyond the perimeter, crowds of spectators and protesters. Signs were visible, some welcoming, others decidedly hostile. Remember, he told his wives as they prepared to disembark, no matter what happens out there, we present a unified front. All 3 nodded in agreement, their royal training evident in their poised demeanor. The reception was exactly as chaotic as John had feared. Camera drones buzzed overhead as they descended the ramp. Reporters shouted questions that blended into an incomprehensible din. Security personnel formed a protective corridor leading to the waiting transport vehicles. What John hadn't expected was his wives' composure. While he felt tense and hyper-alert, they moved with serene dignity, acknowledging the crowd with graceful nods but maintaining regal reserve. Their azure skin and silver-white hair stood out dramatically against the sea of human faces. Yet they carried themselves as if this level of attention was perfectly normal. Which, he realized, it probably was for Elorian royalty. The Earth Council had arranged accommodations at the historic Palais des Nations, now repurposed as the headquarters for interplanetary diplomacy. Their suite, specially modified with environmental adjustments for Elorian comfort, occupied an entire wing, providing both privacy and security. The gravity feels strange, Neera commented, as they settled in. Heavier than I expected. Earth's gravity is 1.2 times Eloria's, John explained. The station was calibrated to a midpoint between our worlds. The air tastes complex, Sarah observed, sampling the atmosphere with what seemed like professional interest. Many organic compounds. Pollution? John asked worriedly. No, Lyra assured him. Life. Your world teems with it in ways ours does not. Millions of different organic compounds from countless species. John relaxed slightly. Good. We've worked hard to restore Earth's ecosystems after the climate crises. It shows, Neera said approvingly. The biosphere readings I took during descent indicate remarkable recovery from the damage described in your historical records. A chime announced the arrival of an Earth Council representative, a polished diplomat who provided their schedule for the coming days, meetings, interviews, cultural events, and finally, the council session where they would testify about their unique bond. The council has also approved your request for a brief private visit to your family home. Engineer Harrington, the representative added. Security has cleared the location for tomorrow afternoon. After the representative departed, John turned to his wives with a mixture of hope and anxiety. My mother has agreed to meet you, all of you. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The one who referred to our marriage as an alien abduction situation? Yes, John admitted. She's trying. This is progress. We will be respectful, Lyra promised. And understanding of her concerns? What does one bring to meet a human mother-in-law? Neera asked practically. Are there traditional gifts? John couldn't help laughing at the question. I don't think there's an established protocol for introducing your mother to your 3 alien wives. Then we shall establish one, Sarah declared with typical decisiveness. The next day found them traveling under heavy security to the modest suburban home where John had grown up. As their transport pulled into the driveway, he felt an odd disconnection, this familiar place from his past colliding with his extraordinary present. His mother waited at the door, a small woman with John's same hazel eyes, her expression a complex mixture of wariness and determination. He embraced her first, then stepped back to perform introductions. Mom, these are my wives, Princess Lyra, Princess Sarah, and Princess Neera Vess of Eloria, your daughters-in-law. Each princess bowed respectfully in the formal Elorian manner they had decided would be most appropriate, not requiring reciprocation, but showing deference to the elder of their consort's family line. Mrs. Harrington, Lyra spoke first, her voice gentle. We understand our union with your son must seem very strange to you. We are honored by your willingness to meet us. John's mother studied them for a long moment before speaking. I expected you to be more alien. The sisters exchanged glances before Sarah responded with surprising diplomacy. Convergent evolution has given our species similar forms, though there are many differences beneath the surface. Please, John's mother finally said, stepping aside. Come in. I've made tea. I wasn't sure if you... We can consume most earth beverages, Neera assured her. Our biochemistry is compatible with yours in many respects. The living room was exactly as John remembered it. Comfortable, slightly outdated, walls lined with family photos. His mother had set out her best China tea service, a touching gesture of hospitality despite her obvious discomfort. I brought something, Lyra said as they seated themselves. She produced a small velvet pouch, and from it withdrew a crystal pendant, similar to but smaller than the royal crystals John had seen before. This is a friendship crystal. It's customary to present one when forming new family bonds. John's mother accepted it hesitantly. It's beautiful. What does it do? It harmonizes with your emotional state, Lyra explained. Over time, it attunes itself to you, bringing clarity and calm when needed. It's not mind control or anything, his mother asked bluntly. Sarah made a sound that might have been suppressed laughter. No, Mrs. Harrington, it has no influence over your thoughts or actions. It merely listens. Like a mood ring. But it actually works, John suggested, trying to bridge the cultural gap. His mother turned the crystal in her hands, watching as it caught the light. Thank you. It's thoughtful. She set it carefully on the table beside her. I should be honest. I'm still trying to understand this arrangement. In my generation, marriage was between two people who loved each other. As it is for most Elorians, Nira assured her. The three bond is specific to royal triplets, not a common practice. And love, his mother asked directly, is that part of this arrangement, or is it purely political? The directness of the question created a moment of silence. John was about to respond when Lyra spoke. The bond began as a political alliance, she acknowledged, but has grown to include genuine care and affection. Our cultures understand love differently, Mrs. Harrington, but the connection between your son and each of us is real and valued. Mom, John added gently, I know this isn't what you imagined for me, but I'm happy. I'm respected. I'm doing important work for both our worlds. And yes, there is love. Different kinds with each of my wives. Still growing, but real. His mother studied the four of them, her expression softening slightly. You look well, John. Better than when you were engaged to that corporate lawyer, actually. Melissa, John remembered with a slight wince. Yes, that wouldn't have worked out nearly as well. A small smile finally appeared on his mother's face. No, I don't imagine she would have shared you willingly. She couldn't even share the television remote. The unexpected joke broke the tension, and conversation flowed more easily afterward. John's mother asked thoughtful questions about Elorian culture, showed family photos that embarrassed John thoroughly, and gradually relaxed in the presence of her unusual daughters-in-law. By the time they departed, something fundamental had shifted. Not complete acceptance, perhaps, but the beginning of understanding. Your mother is stronger than you described, Sarah commented, as they returned to their transport. I see where you get your adaptability. She's trying, John agreed. That's more than I hoped for. The following days were filled with official functions. The princesses were presented to Earth's diplomatic corps, toured cultural landmarks, and met with scientific delegations eager to discuss collaboration opportunities. Everywhere they went, media followed. But the initial sensationalism gradually gave way to more substantive coverage, as the princesses consistently demonstrated intelligence, dignity, and diplomatic skill. Then came the day of the council hearing on the interspecies marriage accord. The grand chamber of the Earth Council was filled to capacity. Delegates from every Earth nation and colony, representatives from allied alien species, media from across known space. John and his three wives sat together at the witness table, facing the semicircular arrangement of council members. At the center sat the council president, flanked by the most senior delegates. This special session addresses the proposed interspecies marriage accord. The president began formally. Before us are engineer John Harrington and Princesses Lyra, Sarah, and Nira Vess of Eloria, whose union has necessitated this new framework. The hearing proceeded with various experts testifying about cultural, legal, and ethical considerations of interspecies marriages. Anthropologists discussed how marriage customs varied widely, even among human cultures. Legal scholars proposed frameworks for respecting alien practices while ensuring informed consent. Finally, John and his wives were called to testify. Each spoke in turn about their experience, the challenges and rewards of their unusual bond, and their hopes for future human-Elorian relations. When the formal statements concluded, the questioning began. Engineer Harrington, began one skeptical counselor. Do you maintain that you entered this arrangement with full informed consent, despite evidence that the nature of the three bond was not disclosed to you beforehand? John chose his words carefully. I entered the marriage ceremony with incomplete information. That was a failure on both sides. Earth officials who didn't thoroughly review Elorian cultural documents, and Elorian representatives who assumed such review had occurred. However, when I learned the full nature of the bond, I made an informed choice to honor and maintain it. A choice possibly influenced by diplomatic pressure, the counselor pressed. All marriages involve pressures, counselor, John replied evenly. Family expectations, social norms, practical considerations. What matters is agency within those pressures. I have maintained mine. Another counselor addressed the princesses. Your Highnesses, Elorian lifespans are approximately 3 times human duration. How does this factor into your bond with a human consort? Sarah answered first, surprising many with her candidness. It is a reality we have accepted. John's shorter lifespan means our time together will be brief by our standards. This gives our bond both poignancy and urgency. We do not take our years together for granted. And when he ages, when he dies, the counselor persisted. Lyra responded, her voice steady despite the painful subject. We will honor his memory as royal consort. The 3 bond will continue between us, carrying his essence in our shared experience. There are also medical options, Nira added pragmatically. Elorian longevity treatments may extend human lifespans significantly. Research is ongoing. The questioning continued for hours, ranging from technical legal issues to deeply personal matters. Throughout, John and his wives maintained composure and honesty, neither minimizing the challenges they faced, nor allowing their bond to be reduced to political abstraction. As the session neared its conclusion, the council president asked a final question. Engineer Harrington, Princesses Vess, what would you have this accord accomplish? What is your hope for its impact? John glanced at his wives, who nodded for him to speak for them all. We hope it creates space for genuine understanding, he said simply. Not merely tolerance of differences, but recognition that love, commitment, and family can take forms we haven't imagined. The universe is vast, with countless sentient species. As we reach outward, we need frameworks that allow connections to form authentically, with appropriate protections, but without unnecessary limitations. He took a breath before continuing. The 3 bond wasn't what I expected when I agreed to a diplomatic marriage, but it has become something valuable, meaningful, and real. Future interspecies relationships, whether marriages, friendships, or alliances, deserve the chance to define themselves on their own terms, grounded in mutual respect and informed choice. The chamber remained silent for a moment after he finished speaking. Then the president nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for your testimony. The council will now deliberate on the proposed accord. The final vote came 3 days later. The interspecies marriage accord passed with a 2/3 majority, establishing flexible guidelines that prioritized informed consent while respecting diverse cultural practices. The Harrington provision, as media quickly dubbed it, specifically addressed cases where cultural miscommunication had occurred, providing remediation processes that balanced individual rights with cultural sensitivity. For John and his wives, the council's decision represented vindication and legitimization of their unique bond. As they prepared to return to New Aurora Station, media coverage had transformed from sensationalist headlines to thoughtful analyses of the 4 who changed interspecies relations. Their final night on Earth. They stood together on the balcony of their diplomatic quarters, looking out over the lights of Geneva and the dark waters of the lake beyond. Your world is beautiful, Sarah said softly, her usual imperial manner subdued by the moment. As is yours, John replied. I look forward to seeing Eloria someday. Soon, Lyra promised, taking his hand. The Royal Council has approved our relocation to the palace for the next standard year. You'll finally see our homeworld. The crystal consciousness wishes to connect with you directly, Nira added. It's unprecedented. No human has experienced full communion with the planetary mind. John felt momentary trepidation mixed with excitement. Is that Safe? The consciousness has been preparing for this, Lyra assured him. It has been studying human neural patterns through our bond. Through the royal crystals? All this time? Sarah smiled at his surprise. Did you think our bedchamber crystals merely provided light? They have been conduits, helping the planetary consciousness understand you through us. That's a little unsettling, John admitted. Yet necessary, Neera pointed out pragmatically. For the third stage of our bond, completion. John looked between his three wives. You mentioned that before. What exactly does completion involve? The sisters exchanged glances before Lyra answered. The final harmonization of our four consciousness patterns, facilitated by the planetary mind. A permanent neural resonance that will allow us to sense each other across any distance. A psychic link? John asked, trying to understand. Not thoughts, Sarah clarified, but emotional states, general well-being, location within reasonable astronomical distances. It would help address the lifespan discrepancy, Neera added. Even when physically separated by death, a trace of the bond would remain. John considered this carefully. A year ago, such a prospect would have seemed alien and frightening. Now, after everything they had experienced together, it felt like a natural progression. I'm ready, he said simply. For Eloria, for completion, for whatever comes next. As dawn broke over Lake Geneva, John stood with his three wives, watching Earth's sun rise, one star illuminating one world. Soon, they would travel to a system of binary stars, to a world of crystal consciousness and ancient traditions. Their journey together was just beginning. Later that day, as their ship prepared for departure, John received one final visitor, his mother, bearing a small package. I wanted to give you this before you left, she said, pressing it into his hands. Open it on your way to your other home. John embraced her, feeling the emotion she struggled to express. We'll return to visit, and you're welcome to come to us, whenever you're ready. Perhaps someday, she allowed, then turned to include his wives in her farewell. Take care of my son, and take care of each other. It was as close to a blessing as they might receive, and all four recognized it as such. Aboard the Concordia, as Earth receded behind them, and they accelerated toward the jump point that would begin their journey to Eloria, John opened his mother's package. Inside was a simple frame containing a photograph, himself as a child, looking up at the night sky with wonder. Attached was a note in his mother's handwriting. You always belong to the stars. Now they belong to you too. John showed the gift to his wives, who understood its significance immediately. Lyra placed it carefully on the viewport ledge, where all four could see it, Earth and childhood behind them, the vast universe and their shared future ahead. As the ship made the transition to faster-than-light travel, the four of them stood together, watching the stars stretch and blur. One human and three Elorians, bound together by choice as much as circumstance, pioneering a path others might someday follow. The three bond, now a four bond, transcending worlds, cultures, and expectations. Imperfect, challenging, but genuine. A bridge between differences, rather than a surrender to them. And as the stars streaked past, John thought perhaps that was what love, in any form, between any beings, was meant to be.